रब्बि इश्रह ली सदरी वयस्सिर ली अमरी वहलुल उक़दतम मिन लिसानी यफ़क़हू क़ौली। The theme for the present talk is peaceful activism in Islam. The concept of peaceful activism in Islam. It seems to be a very strange topic because at present everyday Islam in the news, but in negative sense. Every day people read some item in the papers and listen some items in the TV. So every day Islam is in the news, but in negative sense. People have bracketed Islam with violence. It is a general impression that Islam is a religion of violence. Peace is not a concern of Islam, but it is an opposite picture of Islam. Now, what is the source of this kind of negative image? The source is Muslim practices, not the Islamic scriptures. You know, Islam has an authentic scripture, that is Quran and Hadith. So, if you want to know what is Islam, what are the teachings of Islam, you have to see the scriptures. But you are living in the age of media. People take informations from media, and media covers only people and not the books. Scriptures is not the subject of media. Its subject is people. So media always covers the practices of Muslim people because it is its method. But if you are sincere, you want to know the exact position of Islam, so you have to differentiate between Islam and Muslims. You have to see Muslims in the light of Islamic scriptures, Islamic teachings, and not vice versa. This is the basic formula towards understanding. This is the basic formula towards understanding Islam. Now, what I want to say in this talk is based on scriptures or on the life of the Prophet of Islam. Scriptures provide ideological reference, and the life of the Prophet provides the practical example of the religion of Islam. So this is the scientific way of understanding. Now, I would like to say a few words about the subject, that is peaceful activism in Islam, in the light of Islamic scriptures as well as in the light of Prophet's life. According to my study, Islam is a religion of peace in complete sense of the word. You know, if you want to know about this subject or any other subject, so first of all you have to know what is the target of Islam. What is the target of Islam? So according to my study, the target of Islam is God's realization. One American scholar has rightly said that the supreme concern of Islam is Allah. And I think that this statement is quite true. The very first verse of the Quran tells us this story. This verse is Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. This verse requires acknowledgement. The most important aspect of Islamic teaching is that man must acknowledge God's greatness. Man must acknowledge God's blessing. Man must acknowledge God's bounty. So you can say this, the sole concern of Islam is Allah. It means that to realize the existence of God, to discover the bounties of God, this is the basic concern of Islam. Why? Because God has revealed this book, there is Quran, only as a guidance towards paradise. The subject of Quran is to introduce the creation plan of God. خلق الموت والحیات ليبلوكم أيكم أحسن عملا. So according to the Quran, this world, that is planet Earth, is a testing ground. All those things which we enjoy is not as a reward, it is a test papers. Everything is a test paper. So according to our record, during our life in this world, we will be rewarded in the hereafter, or we will be punished in the hereafter. So this is the basic aspect of the Quran. There are you can find a number of verses in the Quran that endorse this description. That is called inzar, tabshir. So Quran is a book of inzar. Quran is a book of tabshir. Book of inzar means book of warning, book of good tiding. So Quran gives us warning, and at the same time Quran gives us good tiding. Quran says that, O man, ayyuhan nas, ayyuhal insan, O man, you are in this world as a test. So you have to qualify yourself for the paradise. Otherwise, you will go to hell. So this is the subject of the Quran. There is a verse in the Quran about the paradise. ذَلِكَ جَزَاءُ مَنْ تَزَكَّى. Only purified soul will be allowed to go to paradise. Now you can see that this object cannot be fulfilled with violence. It requires peaceful persuasion. Quran or the Prophet wanted to purify the people. They wanted to make them aware of the creation plan of God. They wanted to purify their soul. So how you can fulfill this mission? With violence, with fighting, with war. Fighting or war is quite irrelevant for this purpose. So Quran is a book of peace. Islam is a book of religion, because the mission of Quran is mission of peace. There is a very relevant verse in the Quran, Wallahu yadu ila daris salam, and God calls to the home of peace. And God calls to the home of peace. It is true that there were some wars during the Prophet of Islam, only few wars. But all these wars were defensive wars. Prophet always adopted peaceful method. But his enemies attacked. So after attack, Prophet was allowed to go to defensive war. But even at the war time, his mind was thinking about peace. For example, one of three major wars was Badr, Battle of Badr. So when there was fighting, both the parties were engaged in fighting. Prophet was sitting outside the battlefield. So, tradition tells us that at this crucial time, God sent an angel. Angel came to the prophet and said, God has conveyed you salam, that is peace. God has sent you the message of peace. At the time of war, people were fighting, and the prophet was sitting outside the battlefield. And at this crucial time, angel comes to him and conveys the message of peace from God. Then prophet said, after receiving this message from God, prophet said, Allahumma anta salam wa minka salam wa ilayka yarji'u salam. Allahumma anta salam wa minka salam wa ilayka yarji'u salam. Rabbana hayyina bis salam wa adkhilna daraka dar as-salam. This was the response from the prophet at that crucial time. It means, O God, you are peace. Peace is from you. Peace comes from you. Peace returns to you. O God, let us enter the house of peace. This was the response from God. This was the response from the prophet. So you see, even at the time of war, even at the time of fighting, Prophet of Islam was receiving peace message from God, and he himself responded in this peaceful manner. So I can say that Islam is a religion of peace from A to Z. From A to Z. And there are two different words in Islam, in the Quran. Jihad and Qital. Jihad and Qital. Jihad means peaceful struggle, and Qital means defensive war. There is a very relevant verse in the Quran about jihad. وَجَاهِدْهُمْ بِهِ جِهَادًا كَبِيرًا. And do great jihad with the help of the Quran. You know, Quran is a book of ideology, book of teachings. How you can fight with the help of Quran? Fighting needs sword, and Quran is not a sword. So, وَجَاهِدْهُمْ بِهِ جِهَادًا كَبِيرًا. Do great jihad with the help of the Quran. It means that launch a peaceful campaign with the help of the Quran. launch a peaceful ideological campaign with the help of the Quran. So here jihad means ideological campaign in a peaceful manner. So jihad means this verse of the Quran is quite evident that jihad means peaceful struggle. وَجَاهِدْهُمْ بِهِ جِهَادًا كَبِيرًا, and do great jihad with the help of the Quran. You cannot fight with the help of a book. Quran is a book. So you cannot fight with the help of a book. Fighting require sword, require gun, require bomb. So here Quran says that do great jihad with the help of the Quran. In other words, it means that launch an ideological campaign, launch a peaceful ideological struggle. So jihad is nothing but peaceful struggle for a noble cause, for the cause of Tawheed. Jihad means peaceful struggle for the cause of Tawheed. Then qital means fighting. Qital means war. قَاتِلُوا الَّذِينَ يُقَاتِلُونَكُمْ. It means that fight with those who are fighting against you. وَهُمْ بَدَوْكُمْ أَوَّلَ بَرَّةٍ. So when there is attack, when there is aggression, then Muslims are allowed to go to war in defense. So qital means defensive war. If you read Quran, you will find these two words. If you study Al-Quran, you will find these two words, jihad and qital. So jihad means peaceful struggle and qital means defensive war. You know, there are 6,700 verses in the Quran. There are only 2 dozens of the verses that deal with the qital. All the verses deal with the peaceful teachings of Islam. It means that qital is less than 1%. The content of qital in the Quran is less than 1%. And peace is the subject of the Quran more than 99%. This is the content of the Quran. The Prophet was given a mission from God. That mission was mission of Tawheed, oneness of God. So at that time, you know, Prophet of Islam was born in Mecca in 570 AD, and he was appointed as a prophet in 610 AD in Mecca. So at that time, Mecca as well as the Arabia, people of Mecca and people of Arabia were idol worshippers. The mission of Prophet was Tawheed, but the audience was idol worshippers. So what to do? You know, all the reformers of history started their mission from problem. all the reformers, political reformers, social reformers, economic reformers, and national reformers. Without any exception, all the reformers of history started their mission from problem. They wanted to remove the problem first of all. Although they have some positive program, but they found that there is a problem. So they have no choice. According to their thinking, they found that the only way to work for their mission is to remove the problems first. So all the reformers of history engaged themselves in removing the problems. So what was their formula? It was a 2-point formula. Remove the problems, remove the obstacles, then we will be able to establish our positive program. So removing the obstacle was first, and establishing the positive program was the second. This was the formula adopted by all the reformers. But Prophet of Islam was only person in the history who adopted a new formula, a very strange formula. You cannot find any other reformer who was able to understand or discover this formula. This formula was given in the Quran in these words: فَاصْبِرْ عَلَى مَا يَقُولُونَ وَاهْجُرْهُمْ هَجْرًا جَمِيلًا. وَاهْجُرْهُمْ هَجْرًا جَمِيلًا. It means avoid them with a becoming avoidance, and avoid them with a becoming avoidance. This was the formula. And what was this formula? This formula means avoid the problem and avail the opportunities. Quran calls it a beautiful strategy. Hajr Jameel. Hajr Jameel is a beautiful strategy. Wahjuruhum hajran jamila. And avoid them with a becoming avoidance. It means that adopt a beautiful strategy. That is, avoid the problem, avoid the obstacles, and avail the opportunities. In other words, in another verse of the Quran, there is a detail, some more details. Inna ma'al usri yusra, inna ma'al usri yusra. With every hardship there is ease. With every hardship there is ease. It means that although there are problems, but at the same time there are opportunities. It is the law of nature. In this Quranic verse, God gives us a law of nature. It is a law of nature that with every problem there are opportunities. It is a law of nature. This Quranic verse tells us about the law of nature. This Quranic verse tells us about the law of nature. That is, with every problem there are opportunities. Both are present side by side. According to the law of nature. So Prophet was directed to adopt this formula. That is called in the Quran Hajr Jamil. That is beautiful strategy. The Prophet was directed to adopt this beautiful strategy. That is, avoid the problem and avail the opportunities. I will give you an example. This formula, I can say that if you want to express this formula in a single word, you can say that status quoism or positive status quoism. This kind of status quo was quite new in the history. Positive, you can say it, positive status quoism. That is, I accept the status quo and avail the opportunities. So it is positive status quoism. Positive status quoism. It means I accept the status quo without any confrontation. I accept the status quo without any confrontation. And at the same time, there are some opportunities according to the law of nature. And you have to avail that opportunities. So this was the starting. No reformer was able to find this starting formula. You cannot find a single reformer in the history. All the reformers started their mission from removing the obstacles, removing the problems. Their thinking was that without removing the problem, we cannot do anything positive. So I will give an example. When Prophet of Islam was sent to Mecca in the first quarter of 7th century, at that time there was a grand mosque, that is Kaaba. Kaaba was there. Kaaba was a mosque, a place of worship. So at that time, this place of worship was occupied by Mushrik people. They have established control over this place of worship. So they placed several hundred idols in the premises of Kaaba. Books of history tell us that there were no less than 360 idols in the Kaaba premises. According to the history, according to the historical record, at that time, there were no less than 360 idols in the Kaaba. It was a great problem. Prophet of Islam was Prophet of Tawheed, and Kaaba was place of shirk, center of idols. So it was a great problem. But at this juncture, Prophet was received direction from God. You have to adopt a beautiful strategy. In contrast to all the reformers, of history, you have to adopt a beautiful strategy. And what is that beautiful strategy? That avoid the presence of idols and avail the opportunities. What was that opportunity? The opportunity was that these 360 idols were idols of different tribes. These 360 idols were idols of different tribes of Arabia. So throughout the year, these tribes used to visit Kaaba to offer their worship. So Kaaba was a center of gathering, a center of assembly. Almost every day there was some kind of gathering. So it was a natural audience for the Prophet. It was a natural audience for the Prophet. So Prophet adopted this beautiful strategy. He avoided the presence of idols and he tried to address this audience. This was a beautiful strategy. He avoided the presence of idols. He never touched those idols. He never tried to destroy those idols. Not at all. But at the same time, he tried to avail the opportunity to address those people. And he availed those people as his audience. So this was beautiful strategy. And this was what I say, positive status quoism. That is, avoid the problem and avail the opportunities. This strategy worked. And it was this strategy that resulted in a great success for the Prophet of Islam. Within 20 years, the whole Arabia was Islamized. The result of this beautiful strategy was that within 20 years, the whole Arabia was Islamized. So this was positive status quoism. So I can say that in the history, there were many philosophers, thinkers, and reformers who spoke in terms of peaceful activism or non-violent activism. But they failed. No philosopher, no reformer, no leader succeeded to establish, who succeeded to establish who succeeded to reach his goal with the peaceful manners, with peaceful method. So peaceful activism became a dream. The concept of pacifism became a distant dream. Why? Because they wanted peaceful activism, but they failed to discover a formula. They wanted to practice peaceful activism, But they failed to discover a formula of peaceful activism. All these reformers engage themselves with the problems. Their thinking was that, first of all, we have to remove all those problems. We have to remove all those obstacles. Then we will find scope to do anything positive. This was the wrong formula. So due to lack of the formula, they failed. Although they wanted to adopt peaceful activism, but they failed to discover a formula. Formula means practical formula, feasible formula. So they failed to achieve their goals with a peaceful manner. But the Prophet of Islam, under the guidance of God, was able to adopt a very practical formula, and that was avoid the problem and avail the opportunities. So this is Islamic activism. Islamic activism is peaceful activism, non-violent activism. Here I would like to give some references. The Quran says, "As-sulhu khair." This is a Quranic verse. As-sulhu khair. Reconciliation is the best. Reconciliation is the best. This is the translation of this verse. It means that at the time of controversy, conciliatory course of action is better than the confrontational course of action. At the time of controversy, you have to adopt conciliatory course of action rather than confrontational course of action. This was the direction given in the Quran. Then the Prophet of Islam has said, "Inna Allah," this verse is not simply a verse, it is law of nature. It is the law of nature. So the Prophet of Islam said, "Inna Allah yu'ti al-rifq ma la yu'ti al-unf." This is a hadith. God grants to non-violence what He does not grant to violence. This is a description of the law of nature. It means that according to the law of nature, violence is not a better option for you. Through violence, you cannot achieve anything. The better option is non-violence or peace. If you want to achieve something positive, you have to adopt non-violent course of action or peaceful method. Otherwise, your mission will be doomed to failure. So, this hadith tells us about the law of nature. إِنَّ اللَّهَ يُعْطِي عَلَى الرِّفْقِ مَا لَا يُعْطِي عَلَى الْعُنْفِ. God grants to non-violence what He does not grant to violence. These two references, one from the Quran and one from the Hadith, is enough to understand that the Islamic activism is peaceful activism. The Islamic activism is a non-violent activism. Islamic activism is based on peaceful method, not on violent method. So war is not an option in Islam. No, not option. It is only a compulsion. Peace is option, but war is compulsion in Islam. Sometime when there is attack, when there is aggression, then compulsively you will go to war, to defensive war. Otherwise, you will adopt the peaceful method. So in Islam, peace is an option and war is a compulsion. In other words, in Islam, peace is the rule and war is an exception. In Islamic scheme, according to the Islamic scheme, peace is the rule and war is an exception. So Islam is based on peaceful method. There is no room for violence in Islam, except when there is a compulsion. Then, the greatest target of Islam is dawah. Dawah fi sabilillah. The greatest target of Islam is dawah. That is dawah work. To convey the message of God to all mankind. This is the greatest target. The Prophet of Islam said in the Hajjatul Wada, in the last Hajj, he was addressing to all his companions. So he said, Inna Allaha basani kafatan linnas faddu anni. Inna Allaha basani kafatan linnas faddu anni. God has sent me for all mankind. God has sent me to all mankind. So you have to convey this message to all mankind, to all nations. So this was the main target of Islam. That is called dawah. So dawah work is the main target of Islam. Now what is dawah? Dawah means convincing people that Islam is the truth. Quran is the book of God. Prophet Muhammad was the prophet of God. You have to convince people that Quran is the book of God. Muhammad was the prophet of God. Islam is the expression of truth. Islam is the divine truth. This kind of target cannot be achieved through violence, through war, through fighting. this kind of message can only be achieved through persuasion, through preaching, through peaceful dissemination, what is called dawah and tabligh. So here you can see that the target of Islam is a peaceful target, and it can be achieved only through a peaceful method. Then as far as the individual is concerned, for an individual, the target is to make one a muttaqi man of taqwa, one who believes in God, one who believes in the Day of Judgment, one who believes that God is Maliki Yawmiddin. So can you produce such kind of persons through war and violence? No. It requires peaceful dialogue. It requires peaceful interaction. It requires peaceful tabligh. It requires peaceful preachings. So the whole scheme of Islam is based on peace. There is no room of violence in the Islamic scheme, except at the time of aggression. So, at the time of aggression, Muslims are allowed to go to defensive war, but this is a compulsive involvement in violence. Defensive war means compulsive involvement in fighting, in violence. So in this sense, I can say that peace is an option. Peace is an option for Muslims, and war is a compulsion. Because defensive war is a compulsive war. Defensive war means compulsive war. So this is the peaceful activism in Islam. This is the description of peaceful activism in Islam. Don't see what Muslims are doing. You have to see the scriptures, the Quran, the Hadith, the life of the Prophet, and also the life of the companions of the Prophet. So Quran and Hadith are the only representative of Islam. Anyone who wants to know the Islamic teachings, he must study Quran. So according to my study, I can say with conviction, with complete conviction, I have studied Islam from its original sources. So I can say with conviction that Islam is a religion of peace. The methodology of Islam is based on peace. Peaceful activism is the Islamic activism. Prophet of Islam faced hostilities and enmity, but he always avoided war. except in few occasions. For example, let us take the Battle of Trenches, which is called Ghazwa Khandaq. There was a Ghazwa which is called in the Islamic history Ghazwa Khandaq. Ghazwa Khandaq means Battle of Trenches. But it was not battle. Although you will read in the books this caption, Battle of Trenches, but in actual sense it was not battle. It was avoidance. You know, those people who were enemy of Islam at that time, they attacked Medina with 12,000 men. At that time, 12,000 was a big number. So they attacked. But when they were in the way from Mecca to Medina, Prophet received informations and he dug a trench before Medina. So it was like a buffer. He put a buffer between himself and that attackers. It was a khandaq or trench or a buffer. So at that time there were no helicopters, there were no aeroplanes, nothing. So this trench became a buffer and those people were unable to attack Medina. So after 15 days they returned to Mecca. So it was not battle. Although our books tell us about Battle of Trenches, but in fact it was not a battle. It was avoidance. So every time they wanted to attack, Prophet of Islam tried to avoid fighting. This was his strategy. And this was Hajr Jameel, beautiful strategy. Wahjurum Hajran Jamila, adopt a beautiful strategy. And that beautiful strategy was based on avoidance. Wahjurum Hajran Jamila. It means that adopt a beautiful strategy. And that strategy was based on an avoidance, which I call positive status quoism. So Islamic activism is based on peace and status quoism. This is Islamic activism. Islamic activism is a peaceful activism in complete sense of the word. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم أجمعين.